Hi everyone, I've put together this video to give you a hand if you're struggling on one or two of the questions of this week's homework booklet. This video is for Set 1 Paper 1F, so that will be booklet number 1. And the idea of this video is not to give you the answers, that comes later on, but to just give you some help, the kind of help I might give you if you ask me a question about how to do it in class. So please use this help. Any question you're struggling with, it's not cheating to use the video, that's why I made the video. So if you're stuck on any questions, do as much as you can of the whole booklet without looking at this video. But then if there are a few questions that you need a hand on, then look at this video. See if you can do a few more questions, get a few more marks, get a higher mark, and therefore get more competent. Okay, let's move on. I'm hoping that the first few questions you're perfectly happy with. We're writing these numbers in order of size, so make sure that you take into account that some are negative. They're the smallest numbers. Remember what cent means in centimeters. Think about a century. How many cents in a dollar? That should tell you how many centimeters are in a meter. And you've got to decide whether you're going to divide by that number or multiply. Think about a meter, that's big. A centimeter is small, that should help you. 0.3 as a decimal, you should know what that is as a fraction. You get your units, decimal point, and then the tenths. Likewise, 0.7. What is that as a fraction? Something out of 10. And then what is that as a percentage? Question 5. Here is a picture of a stick. The stick is in 3 parts, A, B and C. The total length of the stick is 30. The length of part A is 16. And 9 is here. Work out the part C. I hope you can do that. This whole length must be 30. You've got this. You just need to find out what's missing. Jessica thinks of a number. She multiplies a number by 3. She then subtracts 7, and her answer is 5. What number did Jessica think of? So you need to take the 5 and go backwards and reverse everything. Reverse the order and reverse the process. That should get you your number. Question 7. The cost of these 2 pens is 60. Work out the total cost of 5 of these pens. Make sure you show you're working out, because you won't get any marks if you don't. It's that unitary method, isn't it? You know what 2 pens cost, work out what 1 pen costs, and then you can work out what 5 pens cost. Question 8. Anne works in the sandwich shop. The dual bar chart shows information about the sandwiches sold. Write down the total number of cheese sandwiches sold. So you've got basically 2 bar charts stuck together. One that shows sandwiches sold for white bread, that's these bars here, and one for brown bread, which is these bars here. And then you've got white bread with ham, brown bread with ham, white bread, egg, brown bread, egg. You get the picture. So you need to write down the total number of cheese sandwiches sold. More white bread sandwiches were sold than brown bread sandwiches. Work out how many more white bread sandwiches were sold. So just make sure you read that question carefully. It doesn't say how many white bread sandwiches. It says how many more white bread sandwiches were sold compared to brown bread. So you need to work out a few things first before you can work out that answer. Question 9. James has 9 cards. Each card has a shape drawn on it. Each shape is a circle or a square or a triangle. James takes a card at random. Which shape is most likely to be on the card? Well, hopefully that's fairly straightforward. What is the probability that James takes a card that has a square on it? And when we're talking about a square, we're talking about the shape in the middle, the grey thing, not the square outline. Just remember that when you want to find a fraction, or a probability rather, you have to write it as a fraction, or a decimal, or a percentage. In this particular case, because there's 9, and 9's not an easy decimal, or fraction rather, to make into a decimal or percentages, I'd leave that as a fraction. If it said what's the probability that James takes a card that has a circle on it, it will simply be 1, 2, 3 out of the 9, which gives you your fraction, which can simplify as well. But make sure it's always something out of something. You can't just say 3, because it depends on how many other cards there are. Is it 3 out of 10? Is it 3 out of a million? So it's important you write it as a fraction. David is going to buy a cooker. The cooker has a price of £320. David pays a deposit of 15% of the price of the cooker. How much does David pay as a deposit? So you need to find 15% of 320. Now, any way you do this is fine as long as you don't use a calculator. It's really important you don't use a calculator because you won't be able to use it in an exam. If I was you, I would find 10%, and then I would use my 10% to find 5%, and then I would use those two answers to get me 15%. Solve x plus 3 is 13, so some number plus 3 is 13. Y divided by 5 is 10. So it's not 2, that will be a common mistake. It's not 10 divided by 5 is y, it's y divided by 5 is 10. So what number would you divide by 5 to make 10? Question 12. Here's a menu in a cafe. A meal is a starter and a main course. So something from here and something from here. One possible meal is soup and chicken. Charlie wants to choose a meal. Make a list of all the different meals she can have. One has been done for you. Soup, chicken. Now if I were you, I would keep using that phrase rather than writing soup and chicken, which is a long time to write out. Just S and C. Okay. Also, if I was you, I would be systematic about it. Don't just randomly choose something from here and randomly choose something from here. Okay, you got soup chicken, then soup fish, and so on. That way, you've got everything. You don't double count and you don't miss any. A meal is chosen at random. What is the probability that the meal will be melon and chicken? So once you've done this question here, you should have a list of all the different combination meals she can have. How many will be melon and chicken, and how many of them are there altogether? So for example, if you did this and you said that there were 9 different meals, there aren't 9 different meals, but if there were, and 2 of them were melon and chicken, there aren't 2, but just say there was, then your probability here would be 2 out of 9. The cafe adds fruit juice as another starter. Charlie says, now there will be one more meal to choose from. Show that Charlie is wrong. So if you put fruit juice here, why is Charlie wrong that there would be one more meal to choose from? Remember, it says here a meal is a starter and a main course. Question 13. Things are starting to get a little bit more tricky as we start to head towards the grade 5, grade 4 questions. The diagram shows a rectangle and a square. The perimeter of the rectangle is the same as the perimeter of the square. Work out the length of one side of the square. Well, you should know what perimeter means. Don't get it mixed up with area. Think about what a perimeter fence does. You can work out the perimeter of this, and then you can work out the perimeter of that, because this will be the same as that. And what do you also know about the sides of a square, apart from the fact that there's 4 of them? Exactly. So if you have the perimeter of this square, you should be able to work out what one length of it is. Remember, we're talking about perimeter and we're not talking about area. Question 14a, write 8:45 as a 24-hour clock time. Okay, so you need to write that down with a 0. Think about that. Sita did a puzzle in 3 minutes 45 seconds, and Ninal did the same puzzle in 7 minutes 28 seconds. Sita said, I did the puzzle in less than half the time Ninal did the puzzle. Is Sita right? You must show all your working. I think the easiest thing to do here, you can do it in other ways, but probably the easiest way to do it would be to change that into seconds and all that into seconds. So 7 minutes, you know how many seconds are in a minute, so 7 minutes 28 seconds. 3 minutes, you know how many seconds are in a minute, and 45. Work out that, work it all out in seconds, and then see if one is half of the other. And make sure you say whether she's right or not, and you must show all your working, so show your working. Question 15. Remember, you have to put the numbers as the same denominator. Never, ever, 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 ever add the denominators. So you have to make the denominators the same. Question 16. Write these numbers in order of size. Start with the smallest number. Well, you should know what these are as percentages. You've got one as a percentage already. You should know what that is as a percentage and what that is as a percentage. If you don't, ask your teacher if it's not me, or ask me if it is me. But you can find out. 2/3. What's that as a percentage? Well, the answer to that question is exactly the same thing as saying, what's 2/3 of 100? Right? In the same way as if I said, what's half as a percentage? What's half of 100? 50. 50%. So what's 2/3 of 100? And that will tell you the percentage that 2/3 is. What you should find is each of these actually give very, very similar numbers. They're all pretty much the same kind of size, very close to each other. But by making them all percentages, or decimals, you got them a way that you can compare them more easily. Question 17. 1 kilogram of cheese costs £5.60. Jane buys 200 grams of cheese. Work out how much she pays. Well, that's 1 kilogram. How many grams make a kilogram? Please don't say 100. Okay, a kilo means a certain thing. If you don't know what kilo means, literally Google what does kilo mean, and it will tell you. And that will tell you how many grams are in a kilogram. Once you know that, you know what fraction of a kilogram you've got. And therefore you can divide that by that number. So for example, if you found out that this was a quarter of a kilogram, it's not, but say it was, if that was a quarter of a kilogram, then that's for a whole kilogram, so you need to find a quarter of that amount. Question 18. Mr. Brown and his 2 children are going to London by train. An adult ticket costs £24, a child ticket costs £12, and Mr. Brown has a family rail card. 1/3 of adult tickets, 60% of child tickets. Work out the total cost of the tickets when Mr. Brown uses his family rail card. So what I would do first of all is remember that it's 2 children here. Don't just do it for 1 child. So get the price for the 2 children, and then remember to take off 60%. Remember, it's not 60%, it's take off 60%. So you've got to find 60% and take it off. You've got to find 1/3 of that and take it off. So think about how you find 1/3 of something. When you find a half of something, you divide it by 2. When you want to find 1/3 of something, you divide it by what? When you want to find a quarter of something, you divide it by 4. You cut it into 4 pieces. So 1/3, and remember that comes off. If you want to find 60%, probably one of the easiest way to do it is find 10%, find 50%, and add it together. Or you could say, well, if 60% comes off, I'm basically playing 40%. Find 10%, double it to get 20%, and then double it to get 40%. 4.52 times 36, you need a way of multiplying these 2 numbers together. Now if I was you, if I was doing this question, I would take out the decimal point. I would multiply 452 by 36, and then once I've got that answer, I'd put the decimal point back in. You need a way of working out where the decimal point is going to go, and you could either say, well, 4 times 36 or 5 times 36 gives you about 180, so that gives you an idea of the size of the number. Or you can look at this number here and say, I've got 2 digits after the decimal point. So in my answer, I need 2 digits after the decimal point. You need a way of working out 452 times 36. Don't use a calculator. You're not going to be able to use a calculator in the exam. You're just cheating yourself. So work it out. If you're not sure, ask me, but you can Google it. You could go into YouTube. You could go into Corbett Maths. You could go into Hegarty Maths. And like I say, you could just type in multiply, long multiplication, and there'll be loads of videos that will show you how to do it. On the grid, draw the graph of y equals 3x plus 2 for values of x from -2 to 2. So what you need to do is draw a table with a column for x and a column for y. And your x numbers are going to go from -2 to 2. Now, what you need to do then is work out what the y numbers will be. How will you work that out? By using this rule. It says the y is equal to 3 times the x number plus 2. So it's telling you how to work out the y number when you know what the x number is. So for example, in your table we're going to go from -2 to 2. So let's do 2 when x is 2. When x is 2, y will be 3 times 2 plus 2. And you can work out what that is. And then you plot that. X is 2 and y is that number you just plotted. You'll get some coordinates from your table. And that should help you. You should get a straight line. Make sure you do. If you don't, you've made a mistake. Go back and check it. 21. Translate the shape P by the vector 5 minus 2. Now, a translation is basically a slide. And these numbers tell you how far along and up to slide the shape. 5 means 5 to the right. If it was -5, it would be 5 to the left. -2 means 2 down, plus 2 would be 2 up. So basically, all the corners of this shape are going to go 5 squares to the right and 2 up. Now, this is really important. Watch this carefully. When you're moving it, this is what some people do. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, down. That's wrong. No, you've got to move each time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, down. Describe fully the single transformation that maps shape A onto shape B. Well, you can see how this has ended up on this. So you need to decide whether it's a rotation, a reflection, an enlargement, or a translation. Whichever one it is, you need to describe it in full detail. For example, if you think it's a reflection, you've got to give the equation of the mirror line. If you think it's a transformation, like this was up here, you've got to say how far along and how far up it moves and write it as a vector, like you did here. And if you think it's a rotation, you've got to decide, apart from saying it's a rotation, how much you rotate it and in what direction, and where the center of rotation is, which basically means what are the coordinates of the point where you put your pen on the tracing paper. What you mustn't do is do several transformations. So it says describe fully the single transformation that maps A onto shape B. So some people say, well, I'm going to rotate it by this amount and then I'm going to slide it, or I'm going to reflect it by this amount and then I'm going to translate it. No, those are two transformations. One single transformation turns this onto this, and you've got to figure out what that is. 22. Get to the more tough questions now. Just think about what 5 squared divided by 5 would be. Think about what x squared divided by x would be. Think about what 2y all squared divided by 2y would be. And now think about what that question would be. Here, the golden rule is to just move everything together that can go together. So what I mean by that is the number times the number. What does that make? A squared times a cubed. How would you write that? B times b. How would you write that? And then put all three things together. So keep the letters separate from each other and keep the letters separate from the number. And then you've got the right answer. Talil is going to make some concrete mix. He needs to mix cement, sand and gravel in the ratio 1 for every cement to 3 of every sand and 5 of gravel. Talil wants to make 180 kilograms of concrete mix. He's got 15 kilograms of cement, 85 kilograms of sand and 100 kilograms of gravel. Does Talil have enough cement, sand and gravel to make the concrete mix? So basically what you're going to need to do is you need to split this into 1 plus 3 is 4, 9 equal parts. One part will be cement, 3 of those parts will be sand, and 5 of those parts will be gravel. And that will give you the weight or the mass of cement, sand and gravel that you need to make 180 kilograms. And then you just compare it with what you need with what you've got. And if what you need is less than what you've got, then you say, yes, I can make it. But if one of them, and it only needs to be one, is less than one of these, then you can't make it. And you say so, and you say why. Question 24. The height h centimetres of a table is measured as 72 correct to the nearest centimetre. Complete the following statement to show the range of possible values of h. So that means that if you are rounding something to 72 to the nearest centimetre, then the next number you'd round it to would be 73. And the one before that would have been 71. So if you think about all the numbers between 71 and 72, they're either going to get rounded down to 71, like 71.1 would be, or up to 72 if it's 71.9, for example. So the question is, what's the smallest value it could be where it still gets rounded up to 72 rather than down to 71? And in the same way, the numbers here, well, they're going to be between 72 and 73. What's the biggest number it could possibly be with it still being rounded down to 72 rather than up to 73? Question 25. Bill uses his van to deliver parcels. For each parcel Bill delivers, there is a fixed charge plus £1 for each mile. You can use the graph to find the cost or total cost of having a parcel delivered by Bill. How much is the fixed charge? Well, the fixed charge is that part of the graph that you start off with that doesn't change. Okay, so you can see that it's going up. Okay, what is the fixed charge? The amount you pay before you've done any driving whatsoever. Ed uses a van to deliver parcels. For each parcel Ed delivers, it costs £1.50 for each mile. There is no fixed charge. Compare the cost of having a parcel delivered by Bill with the cost of him having a parcel delivered by Ed. So, if you look at it, he's charging £1 for each mile, but there's a fixed charge as well. Ed hasn't got a fixed charge, but he's more expensive because he's paying £1.50 per mile. His mileage costs are more expensive, rather. So if I was you, what I would do is I would work out some points for Ed. So for example, if he, let's choose some easy numbers, don't forget we can't use a calculator. What would be the total cost if it was 10 miles? That's an easy number to multiply by 1.5. Okay, so then you know 10, and the cost you can plot on here, and that will tell you the cost for Ed. Let's do it for 20 once again because it's an easy number. Work out the cost for 20 miles if it's a £1.50 per each mile. Work out the cost for 30 miles. Okay, they should be in a pattern. You should get some points, join them up and get a graph. Now, you've got to compare the cost delivered by Bill with the cost of having a parcel delivered by Ed. What you should find out is that the line crosses something like this. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it's going to be something like this. Okay, so there should be a point where the two lines cross. That means it's the same cost, whether it's Ed or Bill delivering it. There should be some times or distances where Ed is more expensive than Bill, and some times when Bill is more expensive than Ed. So just write about that and explain. Look at your graph and explain what it's telling you. Sasha carried out a survey of 60 students. She asked them how many CDs they have. This table shows the information. Write down the class interval containing the median. Well, there's 60 students, so where will be the median? If there are 60 people, what number would be the 60th? Beg your pardon, what number would be the middle person, or the median position? Now you know how many are here, So where would the 60th person be? Not the 60th, I beg your pardon. I'll tell you, the 30th or the 30.5 person. Where would they be here? Well, up to here you've only counted 8 people. Up to here you've counted 19. 8 people here, plus 11 here, 19. You can keep going until you find the 30th person, and then you can explain. Make sure that you write down this thing here. So if you thought it was in here, it's not in here. Your answer would be 5 to 9, not 11. On the grid, draw a frequency polygon to show the information given in the table. Now that's easy, even though it sounds really complicated. All you're going to do is draw a bar from 0 to 4, and it's going to be 8 high. And then you're going to draw another bar from 5 to 9, and that's going to be 11 high, and so on. Doing that will get you a mark. But the frequency polygon is all you need to do is go up to your bar chart, mark the middle of the top of each of your bars, and join each of those points up with straight lines. And then you've done it, and you've got yourself a second mark. If you're not sure, just Google frequency polygon, and it will tell you. Okay, question 27. I think this might be the last question. Let's have a quick check. No, it's not. Okay, let's look at question 27. So Jane has a carton of orange juice, and the carton is in the shape of a cuboid. The depth of the orange juice in the carton is 8 centimeters. Jane closes the carton, and then she turns the carton over so it stands on the shaded face. Work out the depth in centimeters of the orange juice now. So the first thing you need to know, or remind yourself, is how you find the volume of a cuboid. Now, if that cuboid was full of orange juice, the volume would be 6 times 10 times 20. But it's not. It's only 8. If I was you, it would help you picture what's happening. I draw a line like this. Okay? So the orange juice that's inside that carton is in a smaller cuboid. It's 6 by 20 by 8. Not 20, because the depth of the orange juice only comes up to 8. And that will tell you what the volume of the orange juice is. Do that first of all. That will get you some marks. Then she closes the carton, and she turns the carton over so that it stands on the shaded face. Now what is the shaded face? It's 6 by 20. So work out the depth of the orange juice now. So what would the height need to be? If the base was 6 by 20, what would the height need to be to multiply by 6 times 20 to get the volume of orange juice that you've got? And that's the answer. Question 28. The distance from Fulbeck to Gamby is 10 miles. The distance from Gamby to Horton is 18 miles. Raksha is going to drive from Fulbeck to Gamby, and then she will drive from Gamby to Horton. Raksha leaves Fulbeck at 10 o'clock. She drives from Fulbeck to Gamby at an average speed of 40 miles per hour. She wants to get to Horton at 10:35. Work out the average speed Raksha must drive at from Gamby to Horton. Sorry about that. First of all, if it was me doing this, I'd put all this information onto this diagram so I can see clearly what it is I've got to do. So Raksha leaves Fulbeck at 10 o'clock, so 10 o'clock is going to go there. She's going to drive at an average speed of 40 miles an hour, so 40 miles per hour I'd write there for this part. She wants to get to Horton at 10:35. Work out the average speed she must drive at from Gamby to Horton. Well, I've got to cover 18 miles, and I want to get there for 10:35. Thing is, I don't know what time I'm leaving. It doesn't tell me. That's the bit I've got to work out. I do know that I leave Fulbeck at 10 o'clock, and I'm driving at 40 miles an hour. So, how many minutes would it take me to drive 10 miles? If it was 40 miles, I'd drive that in an hour, because I'm driving at 40 miles per hour. But I've only got 10 miles, so what fraction of an hour would it take me to get from there to there? If I can work it out, then I know what the time would be. For example, If it was 20 minutes, it's not 20 minutes. Then I know that if I leave that at 10 o'clock, I'm going to get there at 10:20. And then I can work out how long it takes me for that journey. Okay? Then you can work out how many minutes you've got to travel that 18 miles. And from that, you can work out what your speed would be. For example, if you worked out that, and then from that you know that you've got 15 minutes to do this journey in, okay, you've got to cover 18 miles in 15 minutes. You don't, that's not the answer. But if it was, then 18 miles in 15 minutes means 36 miles in half an hour, which means 72 miles in a whole hour, so it's 72 miles an hour. So my key tip for you is to put all this information on here so you can see clearly. Once again, you've got 3 marks for this question. So working out something gets some marks. Don't be perfectionist and say, just because I can't do all of it, I won't do any of it. Do what you can. Question 29. You should write down the value of 5 to the power of 0. You should know what anything to the power of 0 means. Okay, you should know what that means. If you don't, ask me. 2 to the power of minus 1 is something I don't think we've done yet. We can do that in class. But 10 to the power of minus 1 would be 1/10. 3 to the power of minus 1 would be 1/3. So maybe that gives you an idea about what 2 to the minus 1 would be. Okay, I hope that helped you. If it doesn't, and you really try your best and it still doesn't help you, then ask me, of course. But maybe you can pick up a few marks, do your best on the paper, and get a really good confidence building first mark on this paper. Cheers, folks. Bye.